Kickstarter, first of all, is a great way to get the word out there about your product. Our problem when we went on Kickstarter is that we had a $3,500 printer, and trying to sell it to people who used to buy $100 items on Kickstarter. So it was kind of a stretch for them to pay, to go all the way in to pay for a printer. Now, I think that the Kickstarter is something that, and it's often overlooked, it's something that needs to be prepared for a very long time. We kind of figured out at the beginning that we would just go there, it was going to be viral, and we're going to sell a lot of printers, but it's something that you really need to take a long time preparing. And even if you do, I think it's rarely something that's going to propel you to a point where you can actually, where you wouldn't need any funding. It's most of the people I know who go on Kickstarter usually use that as a milestone to show investors to search for additional funding.
My experience is very different. I think yours is probably more common. So we built probably 40 or so units via rapid machine shop and PCB cards and just hand assembling printed circuit boards in my kitchen, and sold those originally on Grand Street when they were doing some pre-sale stuff. And that was a great way for us to just kind of prove out that there was any interest at all. And then I got a full-time job and it basically languished for 6 months until we got plugged on a podcast called 99% Invisible, which got a bunch of traffic. And so we actually did exactly the opposite, which was we got a bunch of traffic and then launched a campaign a week later. We were incredibly lucky. I would not use my experience as a guide for anybody, but we're kind of a perfect combination of a $40 device. It's cute, which helps. That definitely sells. And the Kickstarter crowd and the NPR crowd have a relatively high amount of overlap. So we got incredibly lucky and raised like $88,000 from that. As far as using it as a tool to launch a company, we will end up basically at zero at the end of this initial run, this initial order, which is basically how we planned it. Like we knew that was going to be the case. But our ultimate goal is to sell direct to radio stations. And so having that exposure on Kickstarter then gave us a lot of exposure to people like station managers who then are beginning to place wholesale orders for our next run. So we would kind of have been totally lost without having that bit of press that Kickstarter brought us, and it was incredibly helpful for that.
So we went on a really interesting journey and decided a couple years ago to stand up our own crowdfunding site because what we were really worried about is a lot of people have these great ideas for new products, but they don't understand manufacturing ahead of time. They're so focused on the press and often kind of at odds with what they need to do that they'll artificially depress the threshold to make sure they get funded. And there's certainly a lot of statistics around it that if you're something like 80% of the way there, you almost have 100% of probability of funding. So there's certainly a lot of pressure to do that. They'd get funded and they'd realize, or come over to us at Dragon and say, hey Scott, we just raised $100,000, $200,000 on a platform. Can you help us build it? And we'd quickly look through the math and realize that they didn't understand the cost of goods, or they really hadn't calculated it. And they also didn't include tooling or other costs. So it's awesome that they raised a couple hundred, but they really need $500,000 or more. And that just led to a lot of challenges. So a few years ago we thought, well, we've got a pretty good understanding of manufacturing. Why don't we jump in and see if we can help them answer the key questions ahead of time, so that when they do run their campaign on our platform, then they've got a really good chance of delivering. And it was an amazing journey to see sort of behind the scenes of how campaigns work. We had one company, I used to teach at Olin, one of my Olin groups called Tessel, had basically sort of like an Arduino but wireless. And they had all their ducks in a row. They had 15,000 subscribers ready to go when they launched, hit the trigger and funded in 3 hours. We had another one in New York here, equally amazing company called Hammerhead, doing really cool navigation. And we were launching in batches, and they just got in under the wire to make it, but didn't have time to set up any of the social media. And they just languished for a long time. But at the end, we were able to activate some bulk orders, and they ended up getting about $200,000 as well. So there's definitely a playbook to this. But it's so important to line up, really understand how much does it cost, how long is it going to take, and how close is your design before you jump on a platform, because your backers will be the biggest supporters ahead of time, but then once you get late, we've all seen the stories in the press, they can very easily switch on you, and it becomes a lot of work and can kill a great idea.